What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. How you doing? Happy Tuesday, everybody. I hope everybody's doing okay. Hope you're having a fantastic start of the week. It finally happened as it was announced by both Joe Rogan and Avi Loeb himself. The professor was on the Joe Rogan Experience to talk about 3i Atlas. They spoke about many things, but that was like the main topic of conversation. And as I've been telling you guys before, I don't think Abby is guilty of anything. I don't think he's doing whatever he's doing with this speculation on purpose. I think that having that scientific curiosity is completely necessary in order to get to understand phenomena that we cannot explain. All of that is okay. And I think that Avi does a great work at doing that. The problem here lies, I think, with Avi not understanding the effect that his words have in the population that is not sound of mind. And I'm talking about extremism and people who are like led by fear mongering that are constantly checking on the internet if there's some sort of end of the world scenario going on. There's a lot of people like that. In this podcast, he said that he can't think about what other people do when he's doing his work. And I disagree with him on that. And that's the fundamental disagreement that we have. I think that his work is very valuable, but I also think that he must understand how responsible he can be of the things that people act upon based on his words and on his work. So I think that he could use to have maybe like a disclaimer or something just to let those people know that he doesn't agree with whatever theories they concoct. And I'll keep saying this. I don't care if people don't like it. I do think that it's very important that he's the only one doing this type of work. I also think that it's smart to keep an eye out on potentialities. I do agree there. I mean, if the NHI are real, it would be really stupid that to think that they're only good types. I don't know. It's a really tricky debate to have, but I think that we at least need to keep that in consideration. Same thing goes with objects like 3i Atlas. So far, there have been a bunch of anomalies in this object. Right now, we are currently starting the 3i Atlas acid test on October 29th this year, meaning tomorrow. The solar system will hold its breath. 3i Atlas reaches perihelion, its closest point to the sun. That's what perihelion means. 203 million kilometers. A moment where natural bodies stay passive and engineered ones tend to maneuver or do something about being so close to the sun. If nothing happens with 3i Atlas, as it goes closest to the sun, I think we can safely just assume that 3i Atlas is just a natural object that has a lot of really weird things to it, or a lot of anomalies, granted. But that's the exact time when we will know for sure whether Professor Loeb's speculation is warranted or not. I think it is always warranted to think about these things. I already just expressed my concern on people who are like not sound of mind. That's all I can say. And that is not Professor Avi Loeb's fault by any means. But I do think that he needs to put out some kind of a warning or a disclaimer to tell these people that he does not align with whatever end of the world scenario they're trying to slap onto his work, which is what's happening. And he knows, like at the start of the conversation, he said there's a lot of misinformation going on. I agree, Professor, but I think that a lot of that misinformation is based on fear that is provoked by speculation. And I know that we need to look into this, but he must have known also that all of this reaction came with the territory because he's had previous experiences before. Oumuamua was probably the best example of what can happen when you start speculating like this. And Keep in mind, Professor Loeb did write a paper with Sean Kirkpatrick about an alien mothership or the possibility of it. And I think that should also be taken into account. Let's start with some clips, yeah? Because I do want to show you the ones where they talked about this stuff, and let me know what you think about it.
Your concerns, and they were saying that this object is nothing but a comet and it's very normal. But then as it got closer and as we got more data, it seems like you're correct.
Well,
This is a very unusual object.
there is something really important to recognize here, that usually when you deal with scientific matters, they have very little impact on the future of humanity. Very little. You know, if the neutrino has a little bit of a mass, doesn't really matter. You know, when we discovered the Higgs boson, the biggest impact was to confirm some idea we had back in the 60s. And, you know, obviously that affected, those people who got the Nobel Prize. But most of us continued as if nothing happened. However, here, if we ever encounter alien technology, everything will change. It will affect the financial markets. It will affect politics in a major way. So my point is simple. This is different than other scientific matters, and the intelligence agencies know very well that events with very small probability have to be considered seriously because they could have major implications. Just think about October 7th. The Israeli intelligence agencies had a theory that the Hamas will do nothing. And they got data that indicated something is going on out there, but they dismissed it because of their theory. Now, because...
Okay, I have to talk about this because he brought it up. Just to be clear, Professor Loeb is Israeli. He served in the Israeli government. So the statements made by him about this do have a bias. So just to be clear on that, because I know that there's a lot of difference of opinion in this matter that he's talking about right now. So I just wanted to clarify that about him.
Also, as a result of their mistake, which was clearly a blunder, a lot of people died on both sides. For that, this could have been avoided if they were to consider a black swan event, an event that you put a small probability for it happening, but you look at anomalies in the data and say, look, the implications are so huge, we have to consider it. And, you know, this idea was already considered by the philosopher mathematician Blaise Pascal. He talked about God, and he said, look, of course, you might think that God doesn't exist, the probability for that is small, but the implications, if God exists, the implications are so huge that we have to discuss it. That was the argument, Pascal's wager. And the intelligence agencies know that. Believe me, the Israeli intelligence agencies will not make that mistake again. Now, here comes an object from outside the solar system, and it shows anomalies. The scientists would say we should be as careful as possible at talking about anything other than a rock. Now, they say that when they know that humanity launched a lot of space junk, a lot of technological objects to space. And we also know that there are 100 billion stars like the sun in the Milky Way galaxy alone. Most of them formed billions of years before the sun. And there are billions of Earth-Sun analogs.
Okay, so that's the first one. And he's just justifying the reason he keeps working on this. He also said that on his Medium account, he makes absolutely zero money out of it, which I found interesting because there's a lot of people accusing him of grifting with the Medium account. And he claims the opposite, that is not true, that he does not make money out of it. That's an interesting data point that I think needs to be mentioned as well. Let's move on to the conversation about the tail, because as you know, 3i Atlas had like a frontal type of tail, which was really weird. And then a few days ago, it changed to just a regular tail any comet displays. So he explains what happened there. Here it is.
We ever observe things in the past that have changed their tail like this?
So there
Or gone
are
from
fake.
a jet to a tail.
This is called an antitail when it's pointing towards the sun. There were optical illusions in a situation where, there is a tail which is pushed away from the sun by radiation and the solar wind, but you're observing it as the Earth goes through the orbital plane of this object, of this comet, and you are seeing it from a perspective that it looks as if the tail is pointed at the sun, but in fact it's just a perspective thing. It's an optical illusion. And there were cases like that. That was seen. But as far as I know, none seen in a situation where it's clear. And in 3i Atlas, it was very far from the sun and Earth, and we saw it towards the sun. There cannot be an optical illusion under these circumstances because it was approaching both the Earth and the sun roughly at the same direction. So I'm not aware of another. But most importantly, you should look at the response of the comet expert community to that anomaly. They say, well, comets are strange. We don't know. Maybe it's these are dust particles that are very big, so they don't get pushed back much. But then how do you scatter sunlight? Usually you need particles that have a size of the order of the wavelength of the light that is being scattered. That's the most efficient process. And when you have dust particles, the ones that have sub-micrometer dimensions are dominating the scattering of sunlight. So why, in this case, you will have only big ones that are not getting pushed back? It could be fragments of ice that are scattering the sunlight that have nothing to do with dust, but those fragments of ice get evaporated, and so they don't have enough time to turn back. I wrote 2 papers on that trying to explain it. But my point is, many scientists are not curious. You would find it surprising. Why are they not curious? Why are they not willing to consider alternative explanations to what is commonly thought? And it's because they're afraid of taking any risk. And I came from a background where I worked in cosmology, trying to figure out puzzles. Like, most of the matter in the universe is of a substance that we don't know what it is. We call it dark matter. It's just to reflect our ignorance. Nobel Prizes were awarded for people who quantified how much dark matter there is, how much dark energy there is. These are constituents whose nature is unknown. And just think about it, giving a Nobel Prize to people who just said how ignorant we are. We don't know what these things are. Ordinary matter makes just 5% of all the matter in the universe. And in this culture of cosmology, when I worked in for 3 decades, it was, completely common to propose ideas to explain anomalies. I mean, the dark matter is an anomaly. You don't know what it is. And people were rewarded for coming up with ideas, imaginative ideas that can be tested experimentally. That's the way you make progress.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with Abby there. I guess, I don't know if you guys remember when I did my video about Eric Weinstein, who spoke about physics probably dying soon. The scientific community were very offended by that video and by what was said by Eric there. And I think that Avi does bring out reactions that are very similar to that, because this is something that I've struggled with for a while. The scientific establishment does not want things changed dramatically from the status quo. They want for it to go through an entire process, and most of the things that are like phenomena that cannot be explained don't even make it to a certain point of the process so it can go through the entire thing. Dr. Avi Loeb failed to mention Dr. Beatriz Villarroel's work, which is currently one of the pieces of work that is the most advanced to explain phenomena that we cannot explain and to study it. And right now there are some obstructions going on. Dr. Villarroel recently told Jesse Michael something she had already told me about Space Force and the Air Force getting all that data of the transients, not NASA. This is something that I tweeted about in a previous episode because she talked to me about that before she spoke to Jesse about it. And I think that a lot of the obfuscation that goes on, and the stuff that happened with Archive also, that is because of this lack of scientific curiosity for things that are difficult to explain and seem unlikely at first glance, but you have to look into them. You have to have that curiosity. And that I do applaud from Professor Loeb because he's had that curiosity. And he also spoke about the possibility that 3i Atlas actually came from the zone where the wow signal came from in the 70s. I don't know if you guys remember, but that's a very famous news story that happened. And this is what Professor Loeb said.
Right? And also, 2 weeks ago, I realized the arrival direction of 3i Atlas was within 9 degrees of the wow signal that was detected in 1977,
Right.
which was an enigmatic, powerful radio signal that definitely came from outside of this Earth. We don't know from where. It was coming from a source that was approaching the sun. And the chance of it aligning with the arrival direction of 3i Atlas is 0.6%. And I just said, well, that's interesting because 3i Atlas was at a distance of 3 light days from the Earth at that time, you know, and you just need about the output of a nuclear reactor on Earth, a gigawatt or so, to produce such a radio signal. By the way, Voyager, right, as of now, is 1 light day away from Earth. Just think about it. 1 light day, the farthest spacecraft we ever launched is 1 light day away, and the size of the Milky Way galaxy, we are talking about tens of thousands of light years. So 1 day out of tens of thousands of years, that's the difference between the distance that we managed to breach so far compared to another civilization.
I don't know what you guys think about this one. I think that it was necessary for him to come on the show and discuss the result or the reaction to his work on the Medium account about this object. But I think it was a little bit of a missed opportunity for him to address the people that, yeah, they do things out of his work that he's not responsible for. But there's still a very patent preoccupation of the results that can cause speculating about this. And again, I know that people are not going to like it. I'm sorry, but I'm just analyzing this as a media analyst because Dr. Loeb is a media outlet, and whether he likes it or not. And I think that there should be a level of responsibility when you put out work through media. And yeah, it's out of his control in many ways, but he can at least try and do something on his end so he can move away from any type of responsibility from people who are not sound. Again, I repeat that. It's concerning, those people, because there's just a lot. There's people from within the UFO community who have big platforms who are talking about reptilians and the Galactic Federation and this object being like a massive craft with a lot of non-human intelligences waiting to invade us. There's a lot of misinformation. Dr. Avi Loeb knows it. And he would do himself a huge favor if he distanced himself publicly from them. That's just my opinion. Maybe he would never heed it. He said on this podcast that he tries to not listen to people who are like contrarian to what he says. Not all of those people have ill intentions towards you or your work, Professor. We're just worried about misinformation and about people being responsible for the stuff they put out on the media. The internet is a vast place, and we need to be more responsible in the way we use our outlets, I think. That's just my only point here. I'm not saying 3i Atlas is not very interesting. I'm not saying it's not anomalous. It clearly is. But I guess we will know after the 29th when the acid test is passed. If it didn't move during perihelion, it's just an object, and we can safely continue to study it and talk about it and discuss its anomalies because there are many. We can't evade that. It's happening. So let me know what you think in the comments about the overall interview. I'll be reading. And let me know what you think about Professor Avi Loeb's work overall. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, and it is what helps us the most. So thank you. But if you want to support us in other ways, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can become a member on YouTube, or you can support us through KGRA. Anything you choose to do is always appreciated, so thank you. And that's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive like Professor Avi Loeb and Joe Rogan. Always. Bye.